Streaming isn't a job, it's a psychological endurance test, and when you're a woman, the challenges significantly intensify. You sit in a 10 by 10 bedroom padded with acoustic foam, staring at a camera lens, talking to a void that mostly ignores you. For 3 years, that was my entire life. I ran a small channel and streamed 5 nights a week. I played indie horror games, built cozy settlements, and interacted with my chat. The internet tells you that consistency is the key to growth, so I was consistent. Every night at 8 p.m., my ring light clicked on, the broadcast software connected, and I performed. My viewer count hovered around 80 people. It was enough to qualify for the affiliate program, enough to make a little side money, but it wasn't enough to quit my day job. The hardest part was the chat velocity. With 80 viewers, only about 5 people actually talk. The rest are lurkers, just numbers on a dashboard. You memorize the usernames of the regulars, you learn their humor, you build a false sense of intimacy with lines of text. There was one regular named Caster04. He never missed a stream. He was a moderator in my chat. If a troll came in and made a weird comment about my appearance, Caster banned them instantly. He gifted subscriptions. He donated small amounts of money. He felt safe, reliable. I was streaming a new, heavily hyped single-player horror game. It was a rainy night in Portland, the wind rattling the old sash windows of my apartment. I had my dual monitors set up. Monitor 1 held the game, and Monitor 2 held my broadcast software, the live chat window, and my audio mixer. I hit the Go Live button. The numbers slowly ticked up, 20 viewers, 40. Within an hour, I hit my usual peak of around 85. The chat was moving slowly. Caster04 was in there, typing his usual greeting. "Evening, Nova. Audio sounds good. You look tired tonight." I gave a professional smile to the camera. "Long shift at the bookstore, Caster. You know how it is, but I'm ready to get scared." I put my headset on and launched the game. I spent the next 2 hours completely focused, exploring a digital haunted house, reacting to jump scares, doing exactly what my audience expected. Around 10:30 p.m., I hit a loading screen. I turned my head to look at the second monitor to catch up on the chat and noticed the viewer count had spiked. I was sitting at 340 viewers. I immediately had a weird feeling about it. That kind of organic growth doesn't just happen. Usually, it means a larger streamer raided your channel, dumping their audience into your room when they log off. I looked at the chat box, expecting to see a flood of new usernames spanning the window. The chat was dead still. 340 people were watching. Nobody was typing, not even Caster04. "Wow," I said into my microphone, adjusting my posture. "Welcome in, everyone. If we got raided, thank you so much. How is everybody doing tonight?" Not a single reply came through. The chat box stayed blank. I checked my broadcast software. The connection was stable, no dropped frames. The bitrate was green. I glanced back at the viewer counter, 342. Then a single line of text appeared in the chat: "Turn off your overhead light." From user 77B9X, it wasn't a standard Twitch username. It was a string of random, alphanumeric characters. I frowned. My overhead light wasn't visible on the camera feed. My webcam was cropped tightly around my gaming chair, illuminated entirely by a purple LED strip behind my monitor and the white ring light on my desk. I gave a nervous, dismissive laugh. "Lighting is fine, guys. Gotta keep the mood spooky." 5 seconds passed. The same user texted again. "The bulb is burning out. It's buzzing. Turn it off." I slipped my headset off my left ear. I listened to the physical room. The ceiling fixture in the center of my bedroom, a cheap, frosted glass dome, was emitting a faint, high-pitched electrical buzz. The bulb was failing. But my microphone was a dynamic, highly directional Shure mic. It was positioned exactly 2 inches from my mouth, specifically calibrated with a heavy noise gate to block out background noise. It didn't pick up my keyboard clicks. It didn't pick up the wind outside. It absolutely could not pick up the faint hum of a dying light bulb 10 feet above my head. I looked back at the second monitor. The viewer count jumped again, 410. Still, nobody else was typing. I minimized the chat window. I clicked open my moderation panel to check the IP data of the users sitting in the channel. When you use a platform's backend, you can see a list of every active connection in your room. I scrolled down the list. There weren't any different usernames, just user 77B9X repeated 410 times. It wasn't a raid, it was a massive botnet. Someone had hijacked hundreds of dormant accounts and forced them all into my specific channel simultaneously. Nova, you froze, are you reading the chat? The message from Castor cut through the heavy silence. I hovered my mouse over his name to type a direct message. Before I could click it, the alphanumeric user typed again. You didn't lock the door when you got home from the bookstore. Careless. My lungs seized. I stared directly into the webcam lens. The tiny green recording light felt like a physical eye burning into my face. My apartment layout is simple. The front door opens into a narrow hallway. That hallway leads straight past my bedroom. My bedroom door was currently standing wide open behind my gaming chair. It was visible on the camera feed. I couldn't move. My hands were gripping the armrests of my chair so hard my knuckles were white. The viewer count began to violently fluctuate. 400, 500, 600. I looked at the live video preview of myself on the second monitor. I looked at the dark open doorway positioned directly over my left shoulder. I didn't turn around in my physical chair. I just stared at the digital reflection of my room on the screen. Slowly from the pitch-black hallway, a hand reached out. It was a large hand wearing a dark leather glove. The fingers curled around the wooden frame of my bedroom door. On the screen, a man stepped partially into the light cast by my purple LEDs. He was wearing a dark hooded jacket. He didn't look at me. He looked directly into the webcam and said, "Brought you more viewers." The chat window exploded. The alphanumeric bot began spamming the same phrase, hundreds of times a second, scrolling so fast the text became a blur of white noise. I didn't reach for my phone, I didn't reach for the keyboard. I kicked my legs out, pushing my rolling chair violently backward. The chair slammed into the man's knees. He grunted, stumbling back into the hallway. The collision knocked my webcam off the top of my monitor. The video feed went sideways, broadcasting a tilted, chaotic view of my carpet. I scrambled out of the chair, bolted toward the bedroom window, unlocked the sash, and threw myself out onto the fire escape. The cold rain soaked through my clothes instantly. I climbed up the rusted iron stairs to the roof of the building and pounded on the heavy metal access door of my upstairs neighbor until he let me in. He called 911. The police secured my apartment 15 minutes later. The man in the dark jacket was gone. They found my front door standing wide open. The deadbolt hadn't been picked, it hadn't been forced. I had simply forgotten to turn it when I walked in, exhausted after an 8-hour shift at the bookstore. The detectives seized my computer and ran a trace on the botnet. They traced the massive spike in traffic back to a centralized IP address. The location wasn't an anonymous server farm in Russia. The IP belonged to a residential internet service provider located in Portland, Oregon. It was less than 2 miles from my apartment. The police executed a search warrant on the address. They found a basement apartment littered with computer hardware. They found thousands of automated scripts designed to flood Twitch channels with fake viewer counts. They also found a wall plastered with screenshots of my live stream, printed out and pinned to corkboard. The apartment was leased to a 24-year-old man. The lease was signed under his legal name, but the detectives found his primary Discord handle logged into the desktop. The name was Castor04. He didn't stumble across my stream. He wasn't a supportive moderator keeping me safe from trolls. He was actively isolating me. He spent months banning other people from talking, controlling the environment, artificially inflating and deflating my numbers to manipulate my emotions, until he finally decided the digital connection wasn't enough. They never caught him. He cleaned out his bank accounts and disappeared before the search warrant was executed. If you build your own computers, you learn pretty quick that hardware never lies. Software can be spoofed. You can fake an IP address. You can run a virtual machine to hide your OS. But hardware has physical limits. It runs on electricity and heat. When you push a processor too hard, things start to drop. I work for a logistics firm now, but 6 years ago, I was just a 16-year-old kid who spent his entire paycheck from a local hardware store on PC parts. I had a dual monitor setup, an overclocked CPU, and an external digital to analog audio converter. I lived in my bedroom. The glow of the monitors was my actual daylight. Back then, I was pouring 50 hours a week into a massive multiplayer extraction shooter. It required tight communication. I usually queue with this kid whose tag is Mute Proxy. He told me his real name was Connor. Connor said he was 15. He lived in Arizona. He talked about how much he hated his geometry teacher, complained about his mom grounding him from the car. He sounded exactly like a high school freshman. His voice was high-pitched, slightly nasal, and every once in a while it would hitch, just a sharp, squeaky break, textbook puberty. We played together every night for 8 months. I gave him my phone number. We texted about game updates. We built a ridiculous amount of trust based entirely on digital proximity. Things changed right after my 17th birthday. I saved up and bought a pair of studio-grade planar magnetic headphones. They weren't gaming headsets with muddy, boosted bass. They were professional studio monitors. They possess an incredibly flat frequency response. You don't just hear the audio, you hear the space between the audio, you hear the noise floor. I plugged them into my DAC amplifier, booted up Discord, and joined Connor's voice channel. He was already in the lobby. "Hey man," his high, 15-year-old voice came through, ready to drop in. With cheap headphones, his voice sounded normal, but with the studio monitors, I could hear a strange, mechanical hum sitting underneath his words. And those voice cracks, the squeaks that I thought were just him going through puberty. Through high-fidelity drivers, they didn't sound human. They sounded like latency, like digital audio clipping. Whenever he raised his voice, the audio waveform compressed. It was a synthetic EQ filter struggling to render the sound in real time. I didn't say anything, I just queued us up for a match. I assumed he was running a basic noise gate filter to block out a loud air conditioner. We dropped into a heavily populated section of the map. It was a dense city grid, raining in-game. My graphics card spun up to maximum load. About 20 minutes into the match, we engaged another team. There were explosions, smoke grenades rendering particle effects everywhere. Connor was shouting call-outs. Suddenly, Connor's character stopped moving. He froze in the middle of the street, out in the open, weapon raised but lifeless. No lag, no disconnect, just a clean stop, like something on the other end had gone quiet. The server latency spiked. There was too much data rendering at once. When a PC hits a thermal bottleneck, the processor starts shutting down non-essential background applications to keep the main game running. Connor's character stood dead still. Over the Discord channel, I heard the distinct digital chime of a USB driver disconnecting. His background software had just crashed. The channel was completely silent for 3 seconds. Then I heard a cough. It wasn't a teenager clearing his throat. It was a low, rattling cough that didn't sound healthy. The kind of deep, chest-heavy sound that belongs to a man who has smoked 2 packs a day for 30 years. My hands stopped moving on my keyboard. My character just stood there in the game, getting shot at. I listened. The high-pitched digital filter was gone. The raw microphone input was broadcasting straight to my headset. I heard the sharp flick of a metal butane lighter, a long, drawn-out inhale. "God, my rig is freezing up," a voice muttered. It was a man's voice, incredibly deep, gravelly, exhausted. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to someone else in his physical room. A second voice, equally deep, answered him from a few feet away from the microphone. "Just restart the audio client. He didn't notice. Did you get him to click the Steam link yet?" "Not yet," the man controlling Connor's account grunted, exhaling smoke. I'm pushing the link now. Once he clicks it, the keylogger will grab his hardware ID and router location. I'm so sick of pretending to care about this kid's high school drama. Just want to pull the IP and log off. My fingers hovered over my mechanical keyboard. I was staring at the second monitor on my desk. Sitting in my direct messages, sent from Connor 2 minutes before the firefight, was a hyperlink. He had told me it was a link to an interactive map for the game. That's when I realized what it really was. It wasn't a map, an IP grabber tied to a remote access Trojan that could give them backdoor access to my entire network. They weren't just playing a game, they were grooming a network connection. They were sitting in a room together, running a voice modulator, mirroring a teenager's life to gain remote access to my physical address and my local network. "Hey," the deep voice said, leaning closer to his microphone. "You hear me? Software glitch. Pull up that link I sent. Tell me where the exfil point is." He didn't know his voice changer had crashed. He thought he still sounded like a 15-year-old kid. I didn't mute my mic, I didn't yell. I reached around the back of my PC tower. I bypassed the software menus entirely. I grabbed the thick plastic clip of the Ethernet cable, and I ripped it out of the motherboard. My monitors went black as the game disconnected from the server. I sat in my dark bedroom, the absolute silence ringing in my ears. I didn't plug the cable back in. I pulled the hard drive out of my computer, took it out to the garage, and drove a masonry nail straight through the magnetic platter. I destroyed the entire OS. I lost hundreds of hours of game data. I lost all my files, but I severed the connection. I still build computers, and nowadays I only play single-player campaigns offline, and I'm happy to stick to it. I haven't seen the sun rise from the right side of a sleep schedule since high school. If you play competitive shooters or modded survival games, the real lobbies don't actually get good until about 3 in the morning. That is when the casuals log off, the servers stabilize, the latency drops. Your entire physical world shrinks down to a 27-inch 144 Hz monitor and the tactile click of Cherry MX keyboard switches. When you spend 14 hours a day with a premium headset clamped over your ears, you get hypersensitive to audio. You can tell if an enemy is walking on wood or gravel just by the frequency of the digital footstep. You train your brain to filter out your actual room and exist entirely inside the audio mix of the game. I was 22, living in a cheap ground floor apartment near an industrial park in Seattle. It was raining, it always is, and I was grinding a low-population community server on a hardcore survival game. You lose all your loot when you die, so you have to trust the people you play with. I was running a duo with a guy whose Discord handle was Apex Null. I didn't know his real name. We had met in a random lobby about 3 weeks prior. He was a solid support player, communicated well, shared resources, covered the flank. He told me he was a college kid out in Ohio. I had no reason to question it. In this space, an IP address is just a location on a map you will never visit. It was pushing 4 a.m. My eyes were burning from screen glare. We were holding down a digital watchtower, waiting for a server reset. Apex usually used push-to-talk. He kept his audio clean, but after our last firefight, his mic got stuck on voice activity. The channel was open. Through my headset, I could hear the ambient static of his room, a desk chair squeaking, the muffled click of his mouse. It's annoying when someone hot mics, but I was too tired to complain. I just turned his user volume down by 20% and kept watching my sector. A few minutes passed, then a garbage truck drove down my actual physical street. My apartment complex shared an alley with a strip mall. Every Tuesday at 4 a.m., the waste management guys came through. The hydraulic brakes squealed, followed by the massive metal crash of the dumpster getting emptied. It was loud enough to rattle the cheap glass in my bedroom window. I muted my own mic so the noise wouldn't blade into the Discord call. I sat there, watching my monitor, waiting for the truck to pull away. 2 seconds later, I heard the exact same hydraulic brake squeal. It didn't come from my window, it came through my headset, bleeding right over Apex's open microphone. followed immediately by the distinct, echoing crash of a metal dumpster hitting pavement. I stopped moving my mouse. Audio delay over a VoIP protocol like Discord is usually around 50 to 80 milliseconds. It's barely a fraction of a second. The sound I heard in my physical room had just played back to me digitally, almost in real time. My throat went dry and I pressed my push-to-talk key. "Hey, Apex," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "You hear that truck?" "Yeah," his voice crackled back through the speakers. "Trash day over here, woke up my dog." He claimed he lived in Ohio. The time zone alone didn't make sense for municipal trash collection, and the acoustic signature, the way the metal echoed off the brick alleyway, it was a carbon copy of my street. I alt-tabbed out of the game. My hands felt clumsy on the keyboard. I opened my command prompt and typed in a basic netstat to trace the connection of our server IP. I bypassed the game entirely and pulled up my own router's admin portal on my second monitor. I wanted to see my network traffic. I looked at the connected devices, my desktop, my phone, my smart TV, and a fourth device, an unrecognized MAC address piggybacking on the 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi band which I hadn't secured when I moved in. To connect to a localized router without a booster antenna, you have to be within 150 feet of the broadcast signal, usually much closer if there are walls involved. I took my headset off. I set it gently on my desk mat. The silence of my apartment felt oppressive. I stared at my bedroom door. I lived on the ground floor. My guest network didn't reach the street. It barely reached the front porch. I slipped out of my computer chair. I didn't put my shoes on. I crawled across the carpet, staying below the sightline of my window blinds until I reached the corner of the room. I slowly peeled back the edge of the plastic blind with one finger. The rain was pooling under the amber glow of the parking lot lights. Sitting in a rusted, late 90s sedan directly outside my bedroom window was a man. The car engine was off. He had a laptop balanced on the steering wheel, illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. He was wearing a bulky gaming headset. A tangled Ethernet cable ran out of his cracked car window, snaking its way through the wet landscaping bushes, and terminating right into the external telecom utility box bolted to the siding of my apartment. He hadn't met me by random matchmaking. He had spliced into my physical network lines weeks ago. He watched my traffic. He found the server I played on. He inserted himself into my lobby, and he spent 3 weeks listening to my voice, charting my schedule, knowing exactly when I was asleep and exactly when I was isolated. Back on my desk, the green ring around his Discord avatar lit up. His voice drifted softly from the headphones sitting on my mousepad. "Hey man, you went AFK, you good?" I didn't answer. I didn't grab a bat or scream out the window. I just slid my cell phone out of my pocket and dialed emergency services. I watched through the blinds as the police cruisers pulled into the complex lot 10 minutes later without their sirens on. They boxed his sedan in. When they pulled him out of the driver's seat, a small tactical knife fell out of his lap onto the wet asphalt. The cops confiscated his hardware. The detective told me later that the hard drive they pulled from his laptop contained over 400 hours of recorded audio, just of my microphone, just me breathing, typing, and talking to myself in an empty room. I broke my lease a little while later. I packed my rig into my trunk and moved back in with my parents. I don't play multiplayer anymore. I stripped my motherboard, sold my headset, and canceled my broadband. Because the worst part wasn't seeing him sitting in that car. The worst part was knowing that for 21 straight nights, he told me good night before he logged off, and I had no idea he was whispering it from 50 feet away.